your perspective, but let me ask you again. There's a real simple solution. Why don't y'all just amend the budget resolution? It just takes 50 votes by my Democratic friends and the vice president. Why don't you just do that? Problem solved. Done. Easy peasy. Finished. Let's go have a cocktail.
Well, it will be up to the leadership of Congress to.
Well, you going to recommend that you do that?
We will confer with them on what is the best strategy to move forward.
It's not often, I haven't been around this place as long as you have. But it's not often around here that we have a problem that has an easy solution. And this is a real easy solution. And I get politics. I understand why politically you folks want to have Republican fingerprints on the spending fiscal knife. I get that. But do you really, is your politics so important that you want to gamble here on the sovereign debt of the United States when you have a very, very simple solution that you refuse to take?
I want to see that the debt ceiling is raised. As I've said, I believe it would be catastrophic not to do so, but I equally believe that deficits have been run under both Democratic and Republican administrations. It's important to recognize that, and that means that paying the bills for those deficits is a shared responsibility, and it should not be the responsibility.
I agree with that.
One party.
Very eloquently put, but it's a fact, isn't it? That you and your folks just want Republican fingerprints on the Democrats' effort to tax, spend, and regulate America into Europe. Now, it's your prerogative to do that. But this is all about the administration's desire to have Republican fingerprints on it and later call it bipartisan. And you know that, Madam Secretary, with all the respect I can muster, and so do the American people. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Kennedy, I rarely speak between witnesses, but I wonder if Secretary Yellen takes you up on the offer to go get a cocktail, if you would pay or you'd skip out on paying the bill and expect Secretary Yellen to pay. Senator Menendez is recognized from New Jersey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had not intended to pursue this line of question.
Different metrics that one might look at. Commonly, debt to GDP ratios are a measure that's widely used. Ours is a little bit over 100%, which traditionally has been regarded as high. But we are in a very low interest rate environment. That's been true for a very long time, and is likely to be true going forward. And an alternative, and I think better measure of fiscal sustainability, outstanding debt. And for the last several years, that's been negative. And even if interest rates, 10-year rates and the Treasury yields revert in future years back up to more normal levels, the interest cost, which really is the burden, is projected to remain low. The plans that the Biden administration has put forth would keep that low at under 1% of GDP.
Thank you. My time has expired. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senators, thank you.
Well, first of all, the package is paid for. So
how is it paid for, ma'am?
There are increases in taxation on corporations and high-income individuals.
Let me ask you a question on that while I have you here. Do you think that taking the cap gains tax from 23.8% to 43.8% will encourage more investment in our economy or less investment in our economy? Do you think that taking the corporate tax from 21% to 28% will actually, we both recognize that corporations, they may write the check, but the people who pay the tax are the consumers. and the employees with fewer wages, fewer increases in wages and lower benefits, how do we think that these higher taxes are going to lead to more opportunities in our marketplace?
Well, first of all, I think that the likely impact on investment spending is very small. And I think in 2017, when taxes were cut substantially, you did not see any surge in investment spending. Instead, what you saw was a surge in stock buybacks. So the linkage between investment spending and the corporate tax rate is really very modest. Mainly, it falls on excess profits.
Yes.
So I think the Biden package, the Build Back Better package, will improve corporate competitiveness because it's going to invest in critical infrastructure
Thank you.
in our economy.
Secretary Yellen, I don't want to cut you off. I have no choice because Chairman Brown is going to cut me off. So before I lose my time here, and thank you, Chairman, for
You already have lost your time, but proceed, Senator Scott.
you are a patient chairman, and I appreciate that more than I can say. I'm so glad that you brought up the 2017 tax reform package that we worked so hard on. Bottom line is, I would say that someone who watches the market, and I know you watch it very closely. The fact is that in 2018, 2019, we saw more revenue to the government, not fewer dollars to the government. And to think that taking the corporate tax from 21 to 28% is somehow going to make us more competitive against our OECD competitors. I know that you have a strategy to raise our GILTI and make us more competitive somehow by having other countries agree to higher taxes. I'll just say that the proof will be in the pudding, and maybe you and I will be here in a couple of years to have a conversation about the results of the tax increase that will make us less competitive, not more competitive. But thank you for your graciousness. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Holland of Maryland is recognized.
The clean electricity plan that would, by 2035, shift entirely the electricity sector to reliance on renewables. And of course, with renewables, as you pointed out, in the case of the UK, there's a question of what to do if the sun isn't out and the wind doesn't blow. And I believe there are storage technologies that can be deployed and other means to address that. And of course, that has to be part of a plan to switch to renewables and address climate change.
Yeah, one of our concerns, of course, is the technical challenge here on on intermittent sources of energy, as you described, and storage. But the impact this will have on families that are on fixed incomes, our seniors, our lower income families, you see these massive spikes in energy costs.
Well, that's certainly something we would want to avoid, and I don't believe that the president's program is going to lead to increases in the cost of energy.
And I respect that point of view. I'm sure when the Europeans launched on this path, they weren't planning to have order of magnitude increases in prices either. But it has been a consequence of the policies. Chairman Powell, earlier this month, in response to revelations about securities trading by presidents of Fed regional banks, he began a review of the ethics and transparency rules across the Fed because, and I quote, "The trust of the American people is essential for the Federal Reserve to effectively carry out our important mission. The Fed Board of Governors is subject to FOIA and the Federal Records Act, but the Fed regional banks currently are not. Would you support making Fed regional banks subject to FOIA and the Federal Records Act to ensure greater public transparency and trust in the Fed?"
Senator, that's a good question. I'd like the chance to think about it and come back to you. I would want to reflect on that and on the reasons why they're not subject to it, and I will do that.
I appreciate that, Chairman Powell. If there's something, and Mr. Chairman, I'll wrap up here the statement. If there's something that concerns many of us is the loss of trust of the American people in their government. And you'll one more example. I appreciate your leadership and thanks for consideration of that request.
Thank you.
Senator from Georgia.